What if I told you that your ancient ancestor, a person who hunted, foraged, and outran predators for breakfast, had the exact same fat-storing biology you do? Same genes, same hormones, same deep, irrational love of anything with sugar in it. The only difference is he lived in a world that wouldn't let him act on it. Picture a Homo sapiens from 50,000 years ago. Not the grunt and club version from movies, a real one. Same brain size as yours, same capacity for frustration, joy, and catastrophically bad decisions. Now drop him in a modern grocery store. He's standing in the cereal aisle. There are 47 options. One of them has a cartoon tiger on the box. He doesn't know what a cartoon tiger means. He figures out the shopping cart in about 30 seconds because he has spent his entire life solving harder problems than, what is this wheeled container for? Here's the question. Not how he reacts to self-checkout, though that would genuinely be a great video. The real question is this. Could that guy, that ancient elite survival machine, actually become obese? Because here's what we've been told. Ancient humans were lean because they moved constantly. They hunted. They walked miles. They were basically prehistoric triathletes, and we are their soft, snack-purchasing descendants. Makes sense, right? Hold on. Scientists have actually studied the closest living equivalents we have to ancient humans. Surviving hunter-gatherer populations that still live by the old methods. The most extensively studied is the Hadza people of northern Tanzania. The Hadza are extraordinary. They hunt with handmade bows. They forage daily. Hadza, women dig tubers from hard African soil and carry heavy loads across open terrain. Hadza, men track game across the savanna for hours. Their daily physical activity would destroy the average modern person within about 4 business days. So researchers strapped actual activity monitors to Hadza adults and measured their daily calorie burn. Not self-reporting, not estimates. Real measurements. Everyone expected the obvious result. They were wrong. The study, published in PLOS ONE, found that total daily energy expenditure among the Hadza was statistically indistinguishable from adults in the United States, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Japan. Let that actually land. A Hadza woman who walks miles, digs in the earth, and hauls water in the African heat burns roughly the same number of calories per day as an American woman who drives to her office and sits at a computer for 8 hours. Same number, different life, same result. How is that possible? The answer has a name: metabolic adaptation. The body is not a simple machine that outputs more energy the harder you push it. The body is more like an extremely cautious accountant. You start spending more on one line item, physical activity, and the accountant quietly cuts somewhere else to keep the total budget identical. The Hadza burn less energy at rest. Their immune systems run slightly leaner. Certain cellular maintenance processes dial back. The result is the same total calorie burn. This is not a flaw in human design. This is evolution doing exactly what evolution does, keeping you alive in a world where food is uncertain and every calorie matters. But here's what this tells us about ancient humans. If the most physically active population alive today burns the same total calories as the most sedentary, then movement alone was never the primary reason ancient humans stayed lean. The real reason was simpler. The world wouldn't give them enough food. And now we have to talk about the most important, slightly unsettling part of this whole story. Because the ancient human body wasn't passively neutral about fat storage. It was enthusiastically, aggressively, almost embarrassingly pro-fat. The entire system was wired to accumulate as much fat as possible the moment food appeared. Because the body knew, from hundreds of thousands of years of hard experience, that food would eventually stop appearing. This has a name: The thrifty gene hypothesis, first proposed by geneticist James Neal in 1962. Natural selection specifically favored individuals who were efficient at storing energy as fat during times of abundance, because those individuals were more likely to survive the inevitable famine. The genes that make fat storage efficient weren't evolutionary accidents. They were competitive advantages. The ancient human who gorged on berries and game during a good season and stored it all as body fat was the one who made it through winter. Everyone else starved. So those genes spread. They became the norm. Every human alive today carries them, including you. This means the ancient human was not lean because his body didn't want to store fat. His body desperately wanted to store fat. It was constantly trying to. He was lean because the environment physically wouldn't cooperate. Now we have direct historical proof of what happens when that same biology meets the wrong food environment. The Pima people of Arizona. For thousands of years, they lived as farmers and foragers in the Sonoran Desert. Lean, active, no obesity epidemic. They had adapted to an environment where calories were hard-won. Then in the late 19th century, upstream settlers diverted the rivers the Pima relied on for irrigation. Their traditional farming collapsed. The U.S. government provided food assistance dominated by refined flour, lard, canned goods, and sugar. Within 1 or 2 generations, an evolutionary instant, the Pima developed some of the highest rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes ever recorded in any human population. Their genetics had not changed. Their food environment had changed completely. Here's the proof that genetics weren't the problem. Their relatives, the Pima living across the border in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Mexico, same ethnic group, same ancient DNA, had continued eating a traditional diet. They remained significantly leaner and metabolically healthier. Same software, different inputs, completely different output. The thrifty gene is not a flaw. It's a feature that became a bug the moment the environment it was designed for ceased to exist. Now you might ask, could an ancient human have gotten fat eating ancient food, even in abundance? Almost certainly not. And here's why. Natural food, even calorie-rich natural food, engages your satiety signals. The fattened wild salmon triggers hormonal responses that tell your brain you've had enough. The protein in game meat is genuinely filling. The fiber in tubers slows digestion. Natural food has what researchers call sensory-specific satiety, the biological tendency to stop wanting a food once you've had enough of it. You can only eat so much salmon before your body waves the white flag. You cannot say the same about a bag of chips, because the chip was specifically engineered to not trigger satiety. The precise ratio of salt, fat, and carbohydrate in ultra-processed food is calibrated, deliberately, not accidentally, to hit what food scientists call the bliss point, the combination that maximizes pleasure while suppressing the fullness signal. The combination that makes the next chip feel just as appealing as the first one, because your brain's reward system never quite receives the satisfaction it was promised. Nature never produced a bliss point food, because nature had no incentive to stop you from feeling full. Only an industry that profits from your continued consumption has that incentive. So, could ancient humans become obese in their own environment? Almost certainly not. Not because their biology was different. Not because they had superior willpower or some ancestral virtue we've since misplaced. But because scarcity was the default setting. Famine was the periodic corrective. And the only food that existed was food that actually told your brain when to stop. Their bodies desperately wanted to store fat. The world just wouldn't give them enough raw material. Drop that same ancient human into the modern food environment. Ultra-processed products engineered to defeat satiety, artificial light disrupting sleep and cortisol rhythms, chronic stress elevating appetite hormones, a delivery app putting 3,000 calories within 5 minutes of any impulse, and he would be just as vulnerable as any modern person. Possibly more. He would have no cultural framework for restraint, no lived experience of abundance, no concept of a serving size or why it might matter. His brain encountering a drive-thru menu for the first time would register it as the greatest caloric windfall in the history of his species. Every ancient instinct would say the same thing. Eat everything, right now, store every calorie, winter is always coming. Here's what all of this actually means. We are ancient humans, not metaphorically, literally. The gap between a Homo sapiens in 48,000 BCE and you right now is, in evolutionary terms, essentially nothing. A few thousand generations, a blink. The body that evolved to survive scarcity is now navigating a world of engineered abundance. And it is struggling. Not because it's broken, because it's doing exactly what it was built to do, in an environment it was never built for. Every time you can't stop at 3 chips, that's not a character flaw. That's a nervous system that evolved to maximize caloric intake, encountering foods specifically designed to prevent satisfaction. Every time something sweet doesn't fill you the way actual fruit does, that's not weakness. That's your satiety hormones being outmaneuvered by a product engineered to slip past them. Every time you're genuinely full, but the dessert menu still looks interesting, that's 300,000 years of reward circuitry doing its job, treating a moment of abundance as precious, urgent, not to be wasted. The ancient human is not a cautionary tale or a symbol of what we've lost. The ancient human is the explanation. He didn't become obese because the world wouldn't let him. We gave him the world, and now we're all living in the result.